I thought I knew the truth about my family and the woman I was falling for. But when Jessica came into our lives, everything changed. Secrets from the past resurfaced, pulling me into a web of lies and danger. Now, the woman I love is at the center of it all. The question is, can I protect her before the truth destroys us both? Before we dive into this powerful story, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you find it compelling, don't forget to hit subscribe. I could feel the weight of the world pressing against my chest as I walked through the crowded airport terminal, Sophia by my side. It had been a tough year, too many dark moments, too many long nights spent sitting in silence, wondering how to help her through the loss of her mother. It felt like yesterday that she'd been laughing, her mother's voice filling the house with warmth. And now it was just us. Sophia's hand clutched mine tightly as we moved through the crowd, her small fingers wrapped around mine like she was afraid I might slip away. It was as if she knew, even though I didn't say it aloud, that I had no idea how to make it all okay again. I wasn't sure if I was even capable of making it better. But today, I was going to try. We'd been planning this trip for months, a long overdue getaway. Just the two of us. The ocean, a peaceful beach, maybe even a little sunshine, something to lift our spirits. Something to remind us that there was still joy in the world, even after all the sorrow. I kept telling myself this was the fresh start we needed, a chance to breathe again. I watched as Sophia looked up at me, her dark eyes still too guarded for a girl her age. She smiled faintly, but there was an unmistakable sadness behind it. "Do you think the beach will help, Dad?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. I squeezed her hand gently. "I hope so. I think it will." I lied. Truth was, I had no idea. What I did know was that we needed to get away, to step outside of the shadows and try to find something resembling normal again. We reached the boarding gate, and the familiar voice of the gate attendant echoed over the speaker, announcing that our flight was ready for boarding. I could feel the buzz of excitement in the air, people were ready to leave the chaos behind and relax, but in the back of my mind, I felt that tightness again. Maybe it was just nerves, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. Maybe it was because I was so used to life throwing punches when I least expected it. As we lined up to board, a flight attendant came up to us with a bright smile, her uniform pristine and her demeanor professional. Her name tag read Jessica. She greeted us warmly, and I offered a half-smile back. "Welcome aboard," she said, looking straight at me before her eyes flickered down to Sophia. "Thank you," I replied, and we followed her toward the jetway. I could feel my daughter stiffen beside me as we stepped onto the plane. She hated flying, always had. But it was something I couldn't fix for her, not yet. I settled into my seat next to Sophia, trying to reassure her with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. She leaned her head against the window, staring out at the runway, her thoughts miles away. I could sense that she was still carrying the weight of everything, the silence of our house, the loneliness that filled the gaps. But here, in this moment, I could pretend. Pretend that maybe, just maybe, things could start to get better. That was until I saw Jessica approach us again. She was smiling, but there was something about the way she looked at Sophia that made my stomach twist. Maybe I was overthinking it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The plane touched down with a gentle jolt, the wheels of the aircraft skimming the tarmac as we made our way into the tropical warmth of the island. My heart lifted for a moment, relieved to finally escape the gray fog of the city. Maybe this trip would offer what we so desperately needed. A new chapter. Sophia didn't react when we landed. She never did. It was as if she was already somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't reach. Her head rested against the seat as the seatbelt sign flickered off, and her eyes were glued to the window once again, but not in the curious way of a child exploring the world. Her gaze was distant, almost empty. "Hey, we're here," I said softly, tapping her arm. She blinked, as though surprised, and then offered me a small, faint smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I know, Dad." Her voice was soft, a quiet whisper against the hum of the plane. "It's beautiful." It was beautiful. There was no denying it. The turquoise water stretched endlessly before us, the sand white and soft, and the air smelled of salt and something else, something new. Something I wanted her to feel, something I wanted to feel, too. But Sophia, she was still lost. I could see it in the way her shoulders hunched, the way her fingers clenched around her backpack strap. She didn't want to be here. Not really. As we stepped off the plane, the warm breeze wrapped around us, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the ocean could wash away some of this heaviness. Maybe we could breathe again. We were greeted by a young man with a wide smile and a large sign that read Matthews, in bold letters. "Welcome to the island, Mr. Matthews, Miss Sophia." He had the kind of cheerful energy that made me feel like we were entering a different world, a world where nothing could go wrong. The drive to the hotel was picturesque. Lush greenery surrounded the narrow road, and I could hear the occasional bird call from the trees. The rhythm of the island was slower, more deliberate, as though it existed outside the rush of the world I'd left behind. The thought of it brought some comfort, but I could still feel the unease. It gnawed at me. Sophia was silent throughout the drive, and though she was looking out the window, I knew she wasn't really seeing the beauty around her. We reached the hotel, a beachfront resort with sleek, modern architecture, but it was quiet, almost too quiet. It felt like it was waiting for something. I was just about to offer Sophia a word of encouragement when I noticed a figure standing near the entrance. It was Jessica, the flight attendant. She was talking to someone I didn't recognize, but the moment she saw us, her smile widened. I felt an unsettling twinge in my chest. Why was she here? Before I could say anything, Jessica turned her attention to us. "It's good to see you both made it. I hope the flight was comfortable." She was standing a little too close, her eyes on Sophia, and I could feel my daughter tense beside me. Sophia quickly dropped her gaze to the ground, avoiding Jessica's eyes. I forced a polite smile. "Thanks for your help on the plane." Jessica's eyes lingered on Sophia, then flicked back to me. "Of course. I'm actually off today, but I thought I'd check in. I know this place can be a bit overwhelming at first, but the island has a way of helping people relax." The strange thing was, she didn't sound like she was speaking to both of us. Her words were soft, almost soothing, but there was an undercurrent of something else. A tension I couldn't place. I took a deep breath, determined not to let my paranoia take over. "We'll be fine. We're here for the beach, after all." Sophia glanced up at me, her expression unreadable. But I knew, this wasn't just about the beach. And whatever it was Jessica was hiding, it wasn't going to stay buried for long. The next few days passed in a blur of sunlight, salty air, and distant waves crashing against the shore. On the surface, everything seemed perfect, the kind of idyllic vacation you'd expect from a postcard. The resort was luxurious, and the staff was friendly. But beneath the beauty, there was something unsettling that I couldn't shake. Sophia didn't speak much, and I found myself retreating into my thoughts more than I'd like to admit. I tried to fill the space with attempts at conversation, small talk about the weather, about the beach, about anything that could distract her from the silence between us. But each time, her eyes glazed over, and her responses were short, distant. It wasn't just the loss of her mother that weighed on her, it was something more. The kind of pain that didn't show on the surface. It was there in her every gesture, every hesitant glance. I couldn't fix it, couldn't take it away, but that didn't stop me from trying. The beach was supposed to be the escape, but every time I looked at Sophia, I could feel the invisible barrier between us growing. I wanted to reach her, to pull her out of the fog she was in, but no matter how much I tried, she slipped farther away. That was until Jessica showed up again. I spotted her by the pool one afternoon, her smile as wide and practiced as ever, but there was something different in her demeanor. Something I couldn't quite place. I felt a wave of irritation rise in me, and before I even knew it, I was heading toward her. "Jessica," I said, forcing a calmness into my voice. She looked up, startled, then smiled warmly. "Mr. Matthews, how are you enjoying the island?" She sounded almost too sweet, too accommodating, but there was something cold behind her eyes. "It's fine," I said quickly. "But I'm curious. Why have you been hanging around? We've seen you at the resort, at the beach. You're not exactly part of the staff here, are you?" Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, but her smile never faltered. "I just like to check in on the guests. You know, make sure everything's perfect for them." She shrugged, almost nonchalantly. "I'm just being helpful." I felt a strange prickle of unease crawl down my spine. Something didn't feel right. Her presence wasn't casual, wasn't just friendly hospitality. She was too involved, too eager to stay close. And it didn't sit well with me. I looked over my shoulder and saw Sophia sitting under a large umbrella, looking out toward the horizon. She seemed restless, like something was gnawing at her from within. I turned back to Jessica, my jaw tightening. "We'll be fine on our own," I said, my voice firm. "Thanks, but we don't need any extra attention." Jessica's smile faltered for a split second, and that was all it took for me to realize that there was more to her than I'd initially thought. She wasn't here for the same reasons as the rest of the staff. There was a hidden agenda, and I had a sinking feeling that it had something to do with my daughter. As I walked back towards Sophia, I felt the weight of Jessica's gaze on my back. And for the first time since we arrived, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next morning, I woke to the sound of waves gently crashing against the shore. The room was bathed in the soft, golden light of early morning, and for a brief moment, everything felt normal. I had hoped, just for a moment, that the ocean breeze would wash away the distance between me and Sophia. But when I turned to look at her, I saw the familiar emptiness in her eyes, the same emptiness she'd carried since her mother's death. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her feet touching the floor, staring at the ocean through the large glass window. The light from the rising sun caught her face, making her seem fragile, distant. I felt a lump in my throat. I walked over and gently touched her shoulder. "Sophia. We can do something today. We could go snorkeling, or maybe take a walk on the pier." She didn't react at first. Then she sighed, almost too softly to hear. "I don't want to do anything, Dad. I just want to be left alone." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She hadn't spoken to me like that in a while, not since the accident. My chest tightened, and I fought the sting of tears. I knew she was hurting, but there was a sharpness in her tone that told me she wasn't just angry at me. She was angry at the world. Angry at everything, even herself. "Please, Soph," I said, crouching beside her. "I don't want to lose you." "I'm right here," she muttered, her voice barely audible. The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't even know where to begin. But before I could speak, the door to our room creaked open. I turned, my gaze snapping to the figure standing in the doorway. "Jessica." "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice almost too sweet, "but I thought you might like a tour of the resort. You know, just in case you wanted to see some other parts of the island. We have some activities today." My stomach churned. The timing couldn't have been worse. Sophia stood up abruptly, brushing past me with barely a glance. "I'm going out for a walk. I'll be back later." She didn't wait for a response. She just walked out, leaving me with Jessica standing there, her smile still intact, but her eyes holding something else. Something that felt calculated. I'm sorry about her, I said, my voice cold. She's going through something. Jessica nodded, her expression unreadable. I understand. It can be hard, especially in a place like this, so far from everything familiar. But sometimes, a change of scenery is all it takes. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica was saying more than she meant. The way she kept appearing when things were tense between Sophia and me, it wasn't a coincidence. I don't need a tour, I said, trying to mask my unease. I'll take care of it. I'll be with my daughter. But Jessica didn't leave right away. She lingered, her gaze fixed on me for a moment too long. Of course. But if you need anything at all, I'm here. You know where to find me. With that, she finally turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the room. My thoughts were racing now, confusion clouding my mind. Something wasn't right. I quickly grabbed my things and rushed out to find Sophia. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking beneath the surface, just out of sight. And when I found her, sitting alone on a bench by the water, I saw it clearly. She was staring out at the horizon, but her expression had shifted. Tears were streaming down her face. The evening had arrived too quickly, the sky turning a dull orange as the sun dipped below the horizon. I found myself walking slowly down the path that led to the small pier. The evening air was heavy with the scent of saltwater, and there was a quietness to the place that felt almost oppressive. Sophia had walked away earlier, tears in her eyes, and I didn't know what to do. Every part of me wanted to chase after her, to pull her back into my arms and promise that everything would be okay. But I knew that wouldn't work. It hadn't worked before. I spotted her sitting at the end of the pier, her legs dangling over the edge, her shoulders hunched as if the weight of the world had settled on them. I took a deep breath and approached cautiously, unsure of how to bridge the gap between us. Sophia, I called softly. She didn't turn around. Her body remained still, like a statue carved from grief. I felt my heart tighten, my breath catching in my chest. I know you're angry, I said, taking a few steps closer. I don't blame you. But you don't have to carry all of this alone. She remained silent, and I could see her shoulders trembling. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I feared she would pull away again. The fear of pushing her farther from me kept me rooted to the spot. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not angry, Dad. I felt a flicker of hope. Then what is it? What's really going on? She turned to me then, her eyes red from crying. I don't know how to feel. I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am anymore. I lost Mom, and I lost you too. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't realized until that moment how much she blamed me, how much she felt abandoned. But I understood now. I never wanted to hurt you, I said, my voice breaking. I've been trying so hard to fix things, but I don't know how. I've never been good at this, at being what you need. Sophia stood up suddenly, wiping her tears angrily. It's not about you being good at it. It's about you being there. But you're not. You're always somewhere else, somewhere I can't reach. The pain in her words sliced through me. I wanted to explain, to tell her that I was doing the best I could, but I couldn't find the words. I just stood there, feeling more lost than ever. I'm here now, I said finally, stepping forward. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I don't have all the answers, but I'll try. I'll always try. Sophia looked at me for a long moment, as though weighing my words, before she nodded slowly, her face still full of hurt. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered, but I'll try to. And that was the beginning. Not of everything being fixed, not of some grand resolution, but of a small step forward. A step that, for the first time in months, gave me a glimmer of hope. The following day, I tried to keep things light between Sophia and me. We had breakfast by the pool, and I made sure to focus on the small moments, getting her to laugh at something silly, letting her vent about things that had nothing to do with grief or her mom. It felt like the first time in weeks that we shared a conversation that wasn't clouded by pain. But as the day went on, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled in my chest. I kept thinking about Jessica. The way she'd appeared just when things between Sophia and me were at their most fragile. How she seemed to know exactly when to swoop in, offering her help, her support. It was all starting to feel too convenient. After lunch, Jessica found me again. This time, she was standing near the resort's garden, a soft smile on her lips, her posture slightly too casual. "Ethan," she said as I walked past, her voice warm but with an underlying tension that I hadn't noticed before. "I was wondering if you'd like to join me for a walk around the grounds. It's beautiful here, and you've hardly taken the time to enjoy the surroundings." I paused, my gut tightening. There was something in her tone that didn't sit right, something almost too insistent. I didn't trust it. But I was trying to be polite, to keep the peace. I couldn't let my suspicions get the better of me. "I'm just going to spend some time with Sophia," I replied, my voice firm. "Thanks, but I think we'll pass on the walk today." Her smile faltered for a split second, but she recovered quickly. "Of course, I understand. But if you ever change your mind, you know where to find me." I nodded curtly and turned away. I hadn't realized how much I was avoiding her until that moment. But something about Jessica's persistent, almost predatory demeanor left me feeling uneasy. There was an edge to her kindness that I couldn't quite place, and I didn't like it. I found Sophia by the beach, her face turned toward the water. She was alone, her fingers running through the sand absently. There was a stillness about her that I hadn't seen in days, like she was waiting for something she couldn't explain. "Everything okay?" I asked as I sat next to her. Sophia didn't answer right away. She just stared out at the ocean. I followed her gaze, noticing a shadow move in the water. My eyes narrowed instinctively, but it was only a passing bird. "Dad," Sophia finally said, her voice so soft I almost didn't hear her. "Why does Jessica keep following us? Is there something we're missing?" The question hit me like a lightning bolt. The same thought had been haunting me, but hearing her ask it out loud felt different. Sophia was catching on too. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice low. "But we're going to find out." As the wind swept through the air, I couldn't shake the feeling that something dangerous was lurking beneath the surface. Whatever Jessica's intentions were, I had to protect Sophia, no matter what. But I had a sinking suspicion that uncovering the truth about Jessica might be more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. That evening, the resort was unusually quiet. The hum of laughter and conversation from other guests had faded into the background, leaving only the steady rhythm of waves crashing against the shore. I sat on the balcony of our room, my laptop open, its faint glow illuminating the darkness. I couldn't get Jessica out of my head. The way she lingered near us, the way her presence seemed too coincidental, too calculated. Every instinct in me told me there was more to her than she let on. I typed her name into a search bar. Jessica Langford. It felt ridiculous, invasive even, but my gut told me I had to know more. For Sophia's sake, I had to understand why she was here, why she had taken such an interest in us. At first, there was nothing, just a few generic mentions, some social media profiles that didn't tell me much. But as I scrolled further, a headline caught my attention. My heart started pounding. "Flight attendant suspended following passenger complaint." I clicked the link, my eyes scanning the article. The details were vague, an incident involving a passenger and a minor confrontation on a flight a few years ago. No names were mentioned, and the airline had dismissed it as a misunderstanding. But the description of the flight attendant's demeanor, cold, dismissive, with a pattern of overstepping boundaries, fit Jessica too well. I sat back, my mind racing. This wasn't a coincidence. She had a history, one that the airline had likely swept under the rug. And now she was here, inserting herself into our lives. I closed the laptop and leaned forward, my elbows resting on my knees. I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me, Sophia's grief, my failure to connect with her, and now this. It was too much. A soft knock at the door startled me. I stood quickly, my pulse quickening as I opened the door. Jessica stood there, her ever-present smile in place. "I thought you might like some company," she said, her voice smooth, her tone uncomfortably casual. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Her smile didn't waver. "Just checking in. You seemed tense earlier." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me to keep Sophia from hearing. "You need to leave us alone," I said firmly, my voice low but filled with barely restrained anger. "Whatever this is, it ends now." Jessica tilted her head, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "I'm only trying to help, Ethan. I think you'll find that we're not so different. We both want the best for Sophia." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't respond, and after a moment, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the tile. As I stood there in the dim light, I realized something chilling. Jessica wasn't just here by coincidence. She knew us, knew about Sophia, about our past, and she wasn't going to walk away easily. The following morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to collapse. My stomach churned as I watched Sophia, sitting on the balcony with her headphones in, staring out at the ocean. She'd been distant all week, and I wasn't sure if it was the grief or something else. But I couldn't blame her. I felt just as lost. I tried to focus on something, anything, other than the gnawing feeling in my gut. But it wasn't working. I needed answers. I needed to know why Jessica had wormed her way into our lives, and why I couldn't shake the sense that we were being manipulated. I couldn't wait any longer. I stood up abruptly, making my way down the hall to find Jessica. There was no more room for politeness or subtlety. I had to confront her. When I reached her room, I didn't knock. I just turned the handle and stepped inside. Jessica was sitting by the window, a glass of wine in her hand. She wasn't surprised by my sudden appearance, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that reminded me of a predator. "You're not welcome here anymore," I said, my voice firm, though I was struggling to keep my composure. "I don't know what your game is, but it ends now." Jessica set the glass down, her expression unreadable. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, her lips curved into a smile, but it wasn't a kind smile, it was cold and calculating. "Ethan," she said softly, standing to face me. "You're so much like him. So sure of yourself, so convinced that you know everything." I felt my chest tighten at the mention of him. I hadn't thought about my late brother in years, but hearing Jessica speak about him, so casually, made my blood run cold. "What do you know about my brother?" Her smile deepened, a knowing gleam in her eyes. "I know more than you think. Your brother was just like you. Too controlling, too focused on the wrong things. But he didn't see the bigger picture." I took a step toward her, my fists clenching at my sides. "What do you mean?" Jessica stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm not here by accident, Ethan. I've been watching you, watching Sophia. The truth is, we both want the same thing. We want to help her, but you're in the way." I recoiled, the weight of her words sinking in. What was she saying? That she was using Sophia for something? "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't going to end well for you," I said, barely containing my anger. Jessica's smile faltered for a moment, and for the first time, I saw a glimpse of something human behind her cold exterior, fear. But it was gone almost as quickly as it had appeared. "You don't get it, do you?" she whispered. "This is bigger than you think." Before I could respond, she turned and walked to the door. But not before she dropped one final bombshell. "I suggest you protect Sophia. Because if you don't, it's not just your past you'll be facing." With that, she left, leaving me standing there, my mind racing. Her words were like a bombshell, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up. The following day was filled with a sense of dread I couldn't shake. I hadn't told Sophia about my conversation with Jessica, I wasn't sure how. But I couldn't keep the truth from her forever. It was becoming clear that whatever Jessica's motives were, they weren't innocent, and I didn't want Sophia caught in the crossfire. Sophia had been quieter than usual that day, her mind clearly elsewhere. She'd spent most of the morning with her sketchpad, drawing the scenes from our vacation, but there was an emptiness in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. The grief was still there, but now there was something else, something that made my skin crawl. After lunch, I decided it was time. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to confront Jessica once more, but this time, I had to know the full truth. I found her in the lounge, alone, sipping from a glass of wine as usual. Her eyes flicked to me when I entered, but she didn't smile this time. She just raised an eyebrow, as if she'd been expecting me. "I need answers," I said, not bothering to be polite anymore. "You're not just here for Sophia, are you? You've been playing a game this whole time. And I need to know what it is." Jessica took a slow sip of her wine, letting the tension hang in the air for a moment. Finally, she set the glass down and met my gaze. "You're right," she said softly. "I'm not here for the reasons you think. But I didn't come here to hurt Sophia." I crossed my arms, still not trusting her words. "Then what do you want?" She leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "I've been trying to protect her." "And you, Ethan? Protect us from what?" I demanded, stepping closer. "If you're trying to help, why keep all of this a secret? What's your real connection to us?" Jessica let out a heavy sigh, as if the weight of a secret she'd been carrying was finally too much to bear. She paused for a long moment, and then, to my shock, she spoke the words I never thought I'd hear. "I'm not just a flight attendant, Ethan. I'm connected to your past, your family's past. My mother was involved in something you don't know about. Something that your father tried to bury." The words hit me like a slap. My mind reeled, struggling to process what she was saying. My father, the man I thought I knew, involved in something dark? "Your father didn't want you to know, but he wasn't the only one hiding the truth." Jessica's voice trembled for the first time. "I've been watching you because I've been trying to stop something that started years ago. And now, it's happening again. It's happening with Sophia." My heart raced as I tried to make sense of everything. "What's happening with Sophia?" Jessica's eyes filled with a strange sorrow as she stared at me. "The same thing that happened to your mother. The same pattern. And if you don't stop it, you could lose her, too." I was frozen. My mind was spinning, and yet I felt like I had been struck by lightning. What was she saying? What could she mean? "You're not the only one in danger, Ethan. If I'm right about what's going on here, you have no idea how deep the truth goes." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. I had no idea how to even begin processing the bombshell Jessica had just dropped. The truth was out there, buried under years of secrets and lies. But could I really protect Sophia from whatever was coming? And was Jessica really here to help, or was she just another piece of the puzzle, playing her part in a much bigger game? I spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze, struggling to process everything Jessica had just told me. My father had been hiding something dangerous, and now it was coming for Sophia. It didn't make sense. How could my family have been involved in something like this? I had always thought of my father as a man of integrity. A protector. But Jessica's words were like a punch to the gut. As night fell, I found myself standing outside, staring out at the dark horizon. The ocean's waves crashed relentlessly against the shore, matching the chaos inside my mind. I needed to understand what was happening, what Jessica's mother had done, and why my father had kept it a secret for so many years. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed Sophia. She had to know. But how could I protect her when I wasn't even sure what we were up against? I turned to head back inside when I saw her, Sophia, standing by the edge of the balcony, looking out at the same horizon. She was lost in thought, her posture slumped with a quiet sadness. "Sophia," I said gently, my voice catching in my throat. She turned, her eyes a little too bright, as if she had been crying. "Ethan," she whispered, wiping her eyes quickly, but I had already seen the tears. "What's going on, Soph? You're not okay, and I know you're hiding something from me," I said, stepping closer, my heart aching for her. She shook her head, forcing a smile. "I'm fine. Just thinking." I could see the cracks in her smile. I wasn't going to let her push me away. "You don't have to protect me," I said softly. "But I need you to be honest with me. I'm not going to let anything happen to you." Sophia met my gaze, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then, she took a deep breath. "There's something I haven't told you," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been having these dreams. Strange dreams. About things I don't remember, about my mother." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean, Soph? What kind of dreams?" "I don't know. It's like flashes. Pieces of memories that don't belong to me, but they feel real. I've seen things, places, faces, like I've been there before. It's all so confusing." I felt a chill run through me. My mind raced. "What do you remember about your mother? You never talk about her." Sophia paused, her lips pressing together in a tight line. "I don't know much. Just that she died when I was young. But in the dreams, she's there, alive. And sometimes, she tells me things. Things about you, about your family, about my father." My heart skipped a beat. "Sophia, what did she say?" "I can't remember clearly, but she told me that I was meant for something. Something important. Something bigger than what I understand." The words hung in the air, thick with meaning. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but they didn't make sense. What was my father involved in? What had he been hiding from Sophia, and from me? The tension between us deepened as I realized that Jessica wasn't the only one hiding secrets. There were forces at play here that neither of us could understand. And if we didn't act fast, we might not be able to stop whatever was coming. Sophia's eyes were wide with fear, but there was something else there too, a sense of responsibility, a weight that she couldn't shake off. "We need to find the truth," I said quietly. "Before it's too late." She nodded, but there was doubt in her eyes. "And if the truth is too much to bear?" I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing for sure, we were running out of time.